Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Macro Golf Podcasts. Hope you guys are all well and good. How are we, Joe? How are we doing?
I'm good. Just had to turn my microphone on.
Great
start. Now I'm here. So we're starting well. Yeah, all good.
How have you been? What have you been up to?
Playing some golf, which is a good sign. We have had a break in the bad weather, which means we have actually been able to get and play some golf, which has been nice. And I think that probably ties us in nicely to today's episode, which I don't want to ruin. I know you're going to introduce today's episode. You're going to talk about it, but it's good timing because I think we're moving into that time of year now where we're definitely able to play more and talking about what that kind of looks like for most golfers and obviously what potential negatives come from that. We obviously had a conversation before this podcast about how we're feeling in our bodies at the moment compared to a few months ago when there was less golf. So looking forward to this chat today, and I think it's going to be very informative for most listeners out there.
Yep. So before we get any further, we're actually going to talk about today, guys. The topic is in-season training versus off-season. So how that looks like, how you should structure your goals and objectives slightly differently. Should your training be any different? Should your gym work, mobility work, anything change during the season? Kind of the benefits, balancing your rest and recovery from both of those, adjusting training intensity, volume, maybe even the mental aspects and emotional aspects of in-season versus off-season. We had a few macro guys talking about today on the WhatsApp how to mentally prepare for tournaments, which is obviously off-season, something you don't really think about. So is there any benefits from looking at that off-season and kind of getting ahead of the game there? Joe, let's start us off. First, let's just describe in-season versus off-season for the listeners.
Yeah, I think this is very dependent on what your golf looks like, right? There's a lot of people that, for example, I was talking to someone in a golf fitness school the other week. They very rarely play in the winter. Weather's not good enough. The motivation drops, and they play very, very little golf in the winter. Do very little practice in the winter. So for them, there's a very definitive kind of off-season and on-season, which basically is either playing golf or not playing golf, which is quite an extreme level. On the opposite side of that, there's obviously a lot of clients that play throughout the year and play in some level of competition throughout the year as well, whether they're professionals or high-level amateurs. So off-season and in-season will look different for everyone. What we're trying to say is at what point is your golf probably at a high and at what point is your golf at a low would probably determine what we're going to talk about as on-season, off-season. And for some it will be when do you play competitive golf, not competitive golf, or when do you play any golf at all, or not golf at all. But I think for most people it's going to be a sliding scale of, when the weather gets better and the season starts to come into flourish. What does that look like for all of the other habits that then come alongside the golf? I think that's kind of what we're going to dig into a little bit more today.
Yep. Let's kick straight in. What would you say? Let's start with in season, because I think for most golfers, for most of our listeners, we're probably getting into that sort of season now. Now that we can play more, the hours, the days longer, we can play a little bit more golf. What would change for some of your clients? What would you change heading into this sort of period, training wise? What would look slightly different there?
It's good. I think it's a good question because a lot of things will change naturally. So whether you would, let's say for example, you always talk about it depends, and it's a good example now is there might be an ideal situation for in-season and off-season. Yeah. But what normally happens is habits will change anyway, just from the situation. For example, if you've got a client that at the moment, or in the off-season they were training 3 or 4 times a week with good strong strength training, and they were getting a lot of work done in the gym and building a lot of strength, they might not just have the opportunity to do that in the season simply because of travel, golf, like the amount of time that gets taken out. Yep. They might naturally then just train less. Yep. So I think what's always important is looking at what is going to happen naturally and then saying how do we optimize what they now have available to them. Obviously the last podcast we did, actually 2 ago, we did habits. Yep. And I think this links very strongly back to habits. It's back to how much time are they going to have to put into doing their training in the gym? How much of a priority is that going to be for them at this time of year? And therefore, what can we then use that time to do? If there's still a priority of getting stronger and building speed, which hopefully there will be some element of that, then we just need to do that in a slightly different way. Yeah. So I don't think the goals necessarily change in terms of we're always trying to get stronger. We're always trying to move better. And we're always trying to improve. It's just how much time do we now have to do that?
Yeah.
And how much effect is that potentially going to have on other things like play and practice?
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
That answers
I can't remember the question.
No, that does. I think, it's kind of a lot of the work that I do with clients in season now is kind of optimizing physical performance. So where are you at? How strong? Hopefully we've been doing a lot of work in the off season, getting you stronger, getting your movement patterns slightly better. Now, how can we optimize where you are in season without fatiguing you? Kind of muscle building workouts can be quite fatiguing. You can get DOMs afterwards. So for a lot of my clients that have been with me during the off season, we've got them to a great level. Yes, ideally we can all be stronger. We can all be slightly have more muscle mass, etc. But where are we now? How can we get slightly quicker? Now we're into the season, the ball's starting to run out a little bit further. How can we hit the ball a little bit further? How can we change the workout slightly to reduce the volume there so that you can actually go out and play twice, 3 times as much as you want to? So the workouts might start to change a little bit, but this is all optimal. It's like you said, that third training session might now get replaced by a midweek round because the hours are longer. So how can we change without kind of going backwards? A lot of the stuff that I talk about with clients in season is saying, how do we not regress? How do we not lose the gains that we've picked up when you've had all the time in the world in the off season? So what will that start to look like?
I think it's a skill that you get better at each time that you do it. And I think a lot of the time when we work with people, they look to us to help them program that and balance that so that they don't have an adverse effect, right? I suppose what we're trying to do is we're trying to continue to train without it affecting our golf is like the be all and end all of what we're trying to do. We're trying to not let the training and physical side interfere with you potentially performing at your top level. But I do believe that there's a skill in that, and there's a very much of a personal, almost like a responsibility to manage your own load and manage your own intensity. I would say for myself that although there might be on-season and off-season phases in terms of, in the winter we don't play as much and we don't potentially spend as much time on the golf course, there's also times in the full season and in the summer where you still just need to manage that time and manage that load. There might be that you haven't got any golf planned for the next 3 or 4 days, so actually you can afford to have a little bit of a harder session. Or there might be other times where you're playing 3 or 4 days in a row and you're like, okay, I just need to take it a little bit easy now. And that's a self-management skill that I think you just get better at year on year. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it's always a definitive line between we've moved from in-season to off-season and now the training significantly changes from here to here. I think it's more of a case of what does our current week look like, our current month look like, our current, even 3 months look like, and what work can we get done in this period that's going to be effective and help us move forward and not have any detriment effect. So there's definitely like to use the classic terms of a macro cycle and a micro cycle, like it very much is like I do believe it's a skill, and I think the better you get at doing it, the better you get at managing your own load, I think you can have more control of that. I definitely say for myself, I know walking in, I could either do a session that's going to make me ache or not make me ache. Yeah. Instantly. I just know what exercises in what load and what intensity is going to do that. Yeah. And I can make a decision when I walk in, how hard do I want to train today? Yeah. I can still get stronger. Yeah. But I can do a session that's not going to make me ache.
Slightly, whether that's slightly less volume or slightly less reps, slightly less weight.
Exercises, I know that certain movements going to make me, like, for example, for me, I know that doing flies makes me ache more than doing pressing. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a balance there where I can weigh up, right? If I don't mind aching, I can throw some more flies in. If I don't want to ache, I can do more pressing. Yeah. I can just balance that. Yeah. I know that lunges, I never ache. Weird. That is weird.
I never ache from split squats are like my nemesis.
Never ache.
Nemesis. Yeah. I know if I've got a round coming up, even like 4 days away, I will take those split squats out.
I love them. The other day I done split squats the morning before playing.
Yeah, no, psycho. Absolutely psycho.
Love it. But I would never do deep squats.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I can squat all year round, no problem at all.
And I think that's what makes our job difficult is we have to kind of do that learning process for the client because we've obviously got a lot of years behind us of our own bodies and understand our own bodies where a lot of the time the golfer doesn't have that. Yeah. And it's, as I said, it's a skill. I think it's a skill that you can learn, and the better you get at that skill, the more you're able to balance your own load, independent of what your programming is, if that makes sense.
We've spoken about it on other episodes. It's kind of the more you train, the more in touch with your body you get. So you start to kind of realize these things. You do start to say, right, certain exercises, maybe 2 days after I work out, I'm really sore, or maybe it's one day, and it's everyone's slightly different. And like you said, we externalize that learning for a lot of our clients for them. However, a lot of people don't have the chance to work with PTs in person or online. Just try to be a bit more in tune with, both of us are massive for keeping journals and workout stuff and kind of making notes on how you're feeling afterwards. I really recommend it. So you can go back and say, oh, actually, I did these exercises, these amount of reps, this weight. I felt fine. I thought I'd be a little bit sore. Oh, actually, I did this and was a little bit sore. Maybe next time before I'm playing or practicing, I shouldn't do that. I should take those out. And it's just getting more in tune with your body and your recovery, essentially.
Definitely. I think one of the reasons as well why keeping journals like that, even in the on-season, is so important, is it's very easy to slowly get weaker and not realise it.
Yes, 100% agreed. Yep.
So although maybe we've kind of jumped ahead, I think, again, we always do this and it circles back and it suddenly makes sense. Well, at least in our mind, it makes sense. I think what we're trying to say is that during the on-season, so when we're playing more golf, it's going to be sensible to manage the amount of training you're doing, manage the intensity of that training so that training doesn't have a detriment on your golf performance or practice, right? So in terms of fatigue and in terms of soreness. But what I think is also important when we talk there about tracking the weight is it definitely is possible to still get stronger and not have that level of fatigue. But it's also even more possible to not get weaker. And I think that's as important, as you said there, about not regressing.
Yeah.
Keeping track of those weights is really key.
Yeah.
So even if you've reduced back the load or in the intensity and you've reduced back the exercises that make you ache, keep a log of those exercises and say, well, last week I did this, so I'm going to at least do that again. I'm not going to let myself go backwards. Where it's really easy, it's like, oh, hang on, I'm playing golf tonight, or I'm playing golf tomorrow, I've got practice tonight, I'm going to do this, I'll better just take it a little bit easy. And it's something you do that week on week, and then suddenly you look back and you're like, how the hell did I lift that weight before? I'm nowhere near that now. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, now I've got to rebuild. And I suppose what we're then talking about is on-season, off-season of like, if we cannot regress during the season, that gives us an opportunity to progress in the off-season.
The off-season, the next
Whereas
time.
if we regress in the season, we're basically just catching up in the off-season.
You think of it, analogy I use a lot with clients is stairs, right? So we're using the off-season, we're potentially getting stronger, we're getting more powerful, so we're going up the stairs, we're progressing forward. Maybe during the season, we don't have quite as much time, but if we can stay the same, so we can stay on that first floor without going back down to the ground floor, then come the next year round, perfect, right, we're up to the second floor. And if we can keep stepping those steps forward year after year after year after year, you should be in an absolutely fantastic place. A lot of my clients I work with go away for a lot of the summer. We come back September time, we're not starting from square one, but they have regressed. And it's normal, we also want to take some time off training to recover and just mentally. But if you can minimize that as much as possible, the next time you've got a bit more time to dedicate to that, you should be in a much better place than you were 6 months, a year ago, depending on time frames and things.
And again, it comes back to that cycle of it doesn't have to be in season, off season. So it doesn't have to be it's off season.
Yes.
I have to progress and I have to move up those stairs to use that same analogy. And then it's in season, I have to stay the same. You can just try and stay the same in the off season, depending on in that week. It might be this week I just need to not move backwards, right? This week I just need to do something to stay the same. Same in the off season, same in the in season. Sorry, you can say actually, you know what? I've got a little bit of time. I'm feeling good. Actually, I can progress a little bit further here. Yeah. So I think we should always just try and look at this in terms of a great big journey that has cycles through it. And we're just always trying to do our best in whatever moment we're in at that time, whether that's in season, off season, whether it's Christmas period, Easter period. We're saying that off season is a time to do all your training and work hard, but off season also has
depends. It depends for Christmas. Yeah.
And then the kids are off school because it's holidays, and then it's cold and it's wet and it's hard. I haven't got any motivation. When the sun comes out, it'll be easier and I'll be able to get out for a run or a workout or whatever. And then it's the summer and then we don't play. So there's always going to be something, and we're just trying to do the best in whatever situation we're in currently and try and move forward wherever we can.
It's managing your schedules, because it's not like, it's much easier to talk in season, off season if we're talking with athletes. Talking with the pros, we go, right, your season starts here, it ends here, perfect. We can really plan out those macro cycles and micro cycles. That's really easy to do, because we know, right, we've got these tournaments here, these rest days here, General population, all over the place. Holidays, kids, work commitments, everything else, playing and golf on top of it. So yeah, it's managing your schedule. Try not to think so much in black and white of, right, season's here, I'm not going to go to the gym. Work out what you can do. And hopefully we've been working on these habits, getting these things embedded in that you still keep them there.
Yeah, I think it's also always having the idea of like what is the overall vision? What you're actually overall trying to achieve?
What's the goals?
Yeah, what are you actually trying? Yeah, what are your goals? Like,
Yeah.
what actually is going to benefit you at this point? And depending on what your goal is, if you've got a serious problem that needs resolving, then maybe you do need to spend a little bit more time doing this stuff, even in the on season. If you're actually like, well, I'm generally pretty fit, pretty strong, pretty quick, then actually I just need to maintain this and I can spend the majority of my time practicing and playing.
Perfect.
Great, you're in that position. It's going to look different for everyone, right?
Yeah.
Depending on what situation we're in. What do you generally recommend for clients who have the apprehension to train anywhere near golf? So generally this time of year we play, people can get out 2 times a week, 3 times a week, even sometimes 4 times a week. Obviously, if you've got a client who says, I don't like doing any type of strength training, even 2 days before I play golf, what would you say to that client? How would you get them around that mentally? And then how would that actually look in terms of the programming? Because I bet there's a lot of people in that category.
Yeah, 100%. It's a really good question. I would say, right, I completely understand, because a lot of people, it is at apprehension, especially if there's a midweek comp coming up or anything, then you want to play your best golf. What I would do is I say, right, just try this workout. And I've actually got a kind of go-to in-season workout that I know is non-fatiguing, that's slightly more plyometric based, more jumps, kind of more ballistic movements and med ball slams that in essence is non-fatiguing. There's no way you're going to get any DOMs from it. You're going to come out feeling like you've got a pump. You're going to come out feeling absolutely fantastic. The endorphins are flowing. And I'll just say, just try this. Even if we cut the session, so typically my sessions are an hour long, even if we do 30 minutes on that and then we'll do 30 minutes, a bit more mobility, a bit more core work, I say, just trust me once. You've worked with me however long, promise you this is not going to make you sore. All it takes is that one workout, bang, they know, fine, I can do X. As long as I can convince them that they can do something, long term I can say, right, you trusted me, we did this, just let's add a few other of these things in here, and hopefully then we've changed their mindset on it. Because you're right, it's a really good question. A lot of people are really scared to work out and train anywhere near golf.
So, the biggest thing I took from that is starting with less, and then gradually building up from there. And that's actually, even if you're in a good mindset, that's probably a good way to go, right? Like 100%. Start with less. If you're going to say, okay, I know I'm going to be playing golf tomorrow, but I need to get a session in because today's the only day I can train. What can I do? Start with less.
Yeah.
And then next week say, okay, well, I was fine for that, obviously. Let's see if I can just increase that slightly, and week on week just try and increase it. And funny enough, your body will adapt at the same time anyway.
Yeah, your body gets used to the volume, right? So and this all depends on, like we said earlier, me and you, we're really in tune with our bodies. We know how much volume, what exercises are fatiguing, non-fatiguing for us. A lot of clients don't, so you're starting from scratch. So it's like, right, just reduce what the exercise. One thing I say is don't start new exercises. It's one of my bits of advice that I wanted to get onto a little bit at the end of the podcast, was actually like, if you know you're playing tons of golf for, so let's say the next month, stick with the exercises you've been doing for a long time. Don't try and add new ones in. Newer exercises, your body's going to get slightly stiffer. They're going to be a bit more fatiguing, a bit more sore. Stick to the ones you've been doing for X amount of time. You might get slightly bored of them, but in terms of performance, perfect.
Agreed. I think the other thing that probably should be considered with this is when you're in the, let's say, the off season, or when you're not playing as much golf, there's definitely less of a requirement to look after your recovery and look after your thorough warming up, preparing your body for both the session and for the golf.
Yep.
It's definitely something that I would say that I do more myself, is when I know that I'm going to be playing golf around a workout, either that's immediately after or the next day, I would definitely take more time to warm up for that workout, because I know that the better quality warm up I have, the less sore I am the next day. Yeah. That definitely works for me. In the same way that I will be much more cautious of my recovery after that session, in terms of nutrition, in terms of sleep, in terms of hydration. And I would also, as a final bit of that, take more time to then warm up for my golf the next time.
Yeah.
And everyone knows I'm not great for warming up for golf. So that is unlike me. But if I've had a hard leg session or done, some kind of training, and I have still some soreness or some stiffness or something that I'm then going to go and play, I know that I can go through a good warm up and get rid of most of that feeling and get myself much closer to a full competitive state, if that makes sense. I think the recovery process, warm up process, is much more important when we've got things clustered together like golf.
Yeah. Even if you're talking about off season and you've got 2 days that you're going to the gym back to back, the same thing applies there. These warm ups, cool downs, being kind of optimal performance actually applies to everything we're talking about. Isn't just your golf. You should want to feel the same for your workouts. You should want to step into the gym and feel as close to 100% as possible. It's never going to be possible every single time, but we want to get as close as we can every time.
Agreed. The other thing that comes up a lot with my one-to-one clients, especially during the in-season for training, is having to take the opportunities when they come. So something we see often is, let's say we've got loads of time for training and we've got loads of time for doing all this stuff because we're not playing as much golf at that point. It'd be really easy for us to miss sessions when we feel it like that day, or things got in the way and we miss that session. Something I see with the on-season is we have less opportunity to miss those sessions. There's definitely less days that we've got free because of the increase in golf or the increase of other activities or holidays or different things. So it's definitely much a case of making the best of the time that you do have and making that time count. So if you do get an opportunity to train and there's not going to be some kind of effect on your golf, really utilize that time and make sure you get a good session in at that point, because we definitely have less of those opportunities that come up week on week and less chance to catch up like we do in the winter. So for anyone that is trying to balance work, golf, fitness, family, friends, social, like everyone, then making those opportunities count is really key. So both in the trying not to miss that session, but also making sure if you do get there, get a good session in and make the most of
those opportunities that you do have that are slightly rarer.
Because less chance to kind of just go through the motions, not because of the intensity or that, but more for the amount of times in terms of frequency that you can go, I think is important.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think, should we talk about the mental side of things a little bit here?
Yeah, I think we spoke about like the mental in terms of the wanting to train. Is that where you're going?
I wasn't going to go there, but if you want to go there, let's open that.
I think you answered that, right? Yeah. I think you answered that in terms of how do we get around it, where we just make sure we do enough sessions that don't make us ache and that don't have a detriment, and embed that positive view. I think there's a lot of people that do believe that it is going to have a negative effect on their golf, right? Yeah. Probably from experience of doing a hard workout and then struggling to play. I would say, give yourself a chance of having a sensible workout and realizing it doesn't make a difference, and then tell yourself that story instead. I think is good. Where were you going?
I was going to go kind of what strategies can we incorporate for in-season stuff, for maybe competitions now that we haven't had in the off-season, or different competitions or match play stuff. Like, what would you talk about for on-season? Because it's something we don't need to think about for the off-season, right? We've got not a lot of comps, maybe some winter medals, but not at all as many opportunities. What can we do in the in-season? If you're playing more, competing more, what would you suggest for your clients there?
In terms of preparation? In terms of
visualization stuff, potentially? Is that something you talk about with clients at all? Or
I think it's in terms of conversations I have a lot with my clients on this, we definitely find it easier to get into routines, I think, in the season. Just the frequency of playing means that you're much, from the experience of me talking with the clients, is they're much more likely to have a routine that they go through when they get to the golf course, how they prepare, what they've got in their bag, what food they take out, what drink they take out, how they prepare for that round, especially if they're playing their home course regularly. And I think that helps with managing anxiety, managing with stress on those. In terms of whether that's different for in-season, off-season, I think just the pure frequency of playing.
You get into the routine of it, is what you're saying.
I think you get into your stride, right? Yeah. Where when we're playing in the off season, you might play for a week and then might not play for 2 weeks because the course is closed or the weather's so bad.
Yeah.
When we've definitely got less normal golf happening, we've then obviously got less competitive golf happening. So you kind of don't really find your rhythm and find your stride.
Yeah.
I would say, that's probably the biggest discussions that I have is players are finding a routine that suits them. They know that every time they get to the golf course, they do X, Y, and Z that helps them prepare then for that situation. But I feel like the pure frequency of it helps them get into that. Gets into that stride.
Yeah.
I suppose warm up and nutrition is
I was about to say, the only thing I really talk about with clients that changes is warm up. Typically, if we are in season, the weather's slightly nicer, you can warm up outside. Hopefully get down to the ground without getting absolutely covered in mud and stuff. So warm-ups might slightly start to change rather than if you're stuck in the clubhouse or if you have to do it at home and then you drive in. So I'll talk about that a little bit with clients. But other than that, it's like you said, getting into the routine of it. The more you do anything, the better, the more efficient you become at that routine. Yeah,
and like you said there about competition, but I suppose we're trying to keep all of this stuff as close to competition-like as possible, right? Yeah. Even if you go out for a social, if you can try and keep that close to your competition in terms of the warm-up that you do, the nutrition that you do, the preparation for that,
you'll play your best golf, and that's what we're...
we're trying to find that best method, and that if we find the right one for you, it shouldn't take that long anyway, and therefore it shouldn't need to change too much from just a social round to a competition round. And I suppose also it shouldn't need to change too much for off-season, really. Your warm-up can be maybe a little bit more in-depth off-season if it's colder. There might be some changes there, and I suppose nutrition and hydration might change, but... Again, it's not like this. We're not flicking a switch from like on to off. I suppose it's one of the things that we're trying to get out here. Also,
it's way more fluid than a lot of trainers and golf coaches I've heard talk about it. It's not just for the professionals.
1st of April.
Yes.
Program changes. But what does your season look like? If you don't play competition golf, then you might just start playing a little bit more when the weather gets good. That might be February. That might be
whenever it is.
June. Where we are now, right? So I think it's really dependent. I think that generally for a lot of the competitive clients that I have, the 1st of April seems to be when competitions then start up again, and they definitely have more midweek things going on. They definitely have more competitions going on, and they definitely want to play more and train less. So if that's going to be your benchmark, then we can use that. But all the principles still apply of, we're still going to work hard, we're still going to train hard, we're still going to try and push our body. We're just doing that with an extra level. But to be fair, a lot of my training, I don't like making people ache loads anyway. It's not. I don't. It depends what they're trying to do, but it's not. I don't think that's necessarily the best.
Oh no! I had a new client on board in last week, and I had to spend like 10 minutes explaining to him that I don't like using soreness as a barometer for a good workout. I said that is not a good sign. He's like, "What do you mean?" It's like he's done a lot of HIIT classes in the past in central London and stuff, and comes out next day like struggles to walk, and I said that doesn't mean you've had a good workout because it's stopping you from performing the next few days afterwards.
It's a measure.
Oh yeah, that makes me sense.
It's a measure, right? It's a measure. Like you're measuring soreness, which means you've measured the breakdown of that tissue. Great, but what you're trying to achieve, if you're trying to achieve severe mass, then maybe that is a useful method for us. But we're definitely going to reduce the amount of frequency that we can train, which also might then limit the amount of growth we can have. So there's always pros and cons of all this stuff, and trying to understand what you're actually trying to get from your training is going to be key, and that leads us back to the goals, right? I would definitely say for me, for my training, I definitely don't train to ache now. No. And if I do ache, it's unusual, but I will allow myself sometimes, if I know I'm not playing any golf, I'll go and do something a bit weird and end up aching, and that's fine.
Generally, you guys shouldn't be aching after every workout if you've especially if you're following a program and you're in the middle of it. Potentially starting a new program or changing a phase, you might that first week or so feel a bit fatigued, but you should never be at that point where you can't walk up the steps or you can't sit down, you're in that much pain. That is never a good sign of a good quotation marks workout. I
definitely think in terms of if you've ate that much, you're probably not going to be able to train for the next 4 or 5 days.
Which just isn't conducive. The lower body. Which isn't conducive at all for playing
for most people's goals.
Frequency.
And for most people's goals, that's not going to be relevant. In terms of even if you take off season, even if you're not playing, you're probably going to be practicing. If you're keen, you're going to be hitting the driving range maybe twice a week, maybe, and then maybe still playing once a week. So there's still no room for that session that's going to batter you so you can't even stand up and sit down for the toilet. There's still no place for it necessarily. Interesting on that. I've definitely moved my thoughts on my own training, and I definitely think that carries out into my clients now.
I 100% agree.
5 years ago, I was definitely training a lot harder, and my programs were definitely closer to that.
Yeah.
And the more I've learned, and the more I've moved away from certain things, I've definitely followed that into my training as well. So
we're getting sidetracked a little bit on kind of programming and things, which I think would actually be a really good episode type of what splits are good for what are non-fatiguing different ways to kind of manage your volume in the most optimum way. But we can break that down another time. I think that'd be a really good episode actually. Anything else you want to cover, Joe, for kind of in season, off season that we haven't done?
How about structuring your like recovery and preparation? We spoke a little bit about recovery on the warm-up episode that we did. This obviously becomes a lot more relevant in season. We're assuming that we're playing more golf. That's going to become a lot more relevant. So we're definitely saying to do a bit of active recovery, a little bit of mobilization work, maybe a little bit of soft tissue work. I really like a little bit of massage on the calves, a little bit of massage on the bottom of the feet is good if you're playing a lot. Managing your nutrition and hydration is going to be of huge importance.
Massive importance,
Recovering from golf, not just from the training.
Yeah.
And also not forgetting that for most people out there, there's going to be some element of well-being that wants to be linked to your golf journey as well, right? So there's going to be an element of being fit, healthy, pain-free, and playing great golf.
Yeah.
And remembering that balancing all of these aspects is always going to be the best way of you improving all of these things.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah. It's like we've spoken about a lot of times, guys, that this kind of all or nothing approach just doesn't work. We want to play the best golf, you want to be the happiest, you want to be the fittest, you want to play as much golf as possible, and kind of jumping into these things head first is not going to help with that at all. Other modes for recovery that I'd focus on with clients in season, I'm going to say it again, I think it's the first time I've said it this episode, but it does depend. I know, for example, since my back injury, that sometimes after golf, my lower back gets a little bit stiff, so I'll do a little bit more work on my lower back, a bit more rotation stuff, some foam rolling. If you know, potentially, like you touched on there, if your calves and your Achilles get really tight, potentially if you've been on a really, really hilly track, then spend a little bit of time on that. To see, like we spoke about with being in tune with your body for workouts, you should be the same for golf. You should know how you feel after a round and what's conducive to recover as quickly as possible for if you're playing the next day. What do you need to do slightly differently if you've got a couple of days off? It's just being in tune with your body is really going to help with that.
Agreed. Fully agreed. Sam, what other topics are we going to cover? We need to get a list. We'll ask the group. We'll ask the Team Macro Golf team.
If you listeners have any suggestions for any other episodes, let us know. We've got some cool guests lining up. And actually, I just want to take the time to kind of say thank you guys for listening, because the numbers have been exploding the last couple of weeks, which is fantastic. I don't think either one of us kind of expected it to go quite so well. Yeah,
it's been really nice to see, and hopefully we're bringing some good value. We hope, but we want to definitely bring more value to everyone, depending on what you want to listen to. We've covered some main topics, but we've got loads more that we want to discuss. But we want to hopefully cover topics that people find interesting. You're right with the guests as well. Obviously, we had Dave on, who was fantastic.
That was a great episode. Yeah, I loved that.
Really good. And we've got more people lined up who we're going to be bringing on in the next few weeks. But if there's anyone you think we should get on that would join nicely into the conversation, suggest us.
Yeah.
Or suggest to us. And also topics. Any topics you want covered, no matter how silly they sound.
Hit us up.
We'll do it. We'll cover it.
Guys, thanks again, and hope you're all well. Have a good one.